Tom Epstein,
Here.
Pam Hayes, Eloy Ortiz Oakley, Hildegard Aguinaldo, Darius Anderson, Arnaldo Avalos,
Here.
Jeffrey Baum,
Here.
Connie Conway, Amy Costa, Tom Epstein, oh, I said you, Tom, Jolena Grande,
Here.
Jennifer Perry, Mon Fawn,
Here.
Bill Rawlings,
Here.
Valerie Shaw, Blas Villalobos, Alexander Walker Griffin,
Here.
Alexis Zaragoza.
Here.
Okay, great. And the Chancellor's plane was delayed. He will be here probably in about 45 minutes or so, maybe. And Vice President Haynes at a trustee event this morning. She should be here fairly soon as well. Now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's see. Connie hasn't been here in a while. She can lead it.
Good, I'm on the record. Please join me as we salute the flag of our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So with the order of the agenda, does anybody have a concern about the order of the agenda? Okay, then President's report, not much to report other than the search for a CEO. It looks like it will be delayed a month or two. We probably are not going to be able to complete it by in time for the January meeting as we had hoped, but hopefully soon thereafter. We're still recruiting new candidates, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later, but that's probably the biggest news that we have to report, and the Chancellor will make a report when he gets here. So first off, we have the exciting meeting minutes from our first 3 meetings to take action on. Does anyone have any observations to make about the minutes? In that case, looking for a motion to approve the minutes of for items 1, 2, and 3.
So moved.
Okay. Any other conversation? Oh, I guess I could have let the Vice Chancellor present this item, but
I think only one change to the September 18th Board of Trustees minutes is our President of the Academic Senate, John Stanskis, did make public comment, and so we will make that change to reflect that.
okay. Can I have a new motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Oh, aye. Opposed? Okay. Moving on to...
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a procedural question?
You may.
So on the executive committee, which we're voting on, if folks who are not on the executive committee, should we be voting on that as well? Because we weren't pertinent to the meeting and the minutes? Or should we only vote on the Board of Trustees?
That's an excellent point, Member Fawn. I'm not entirely sure. Could I ask Mr. Lavoisier to enlighten us?
Good morning. I actually just noticed this item on the agenda myself this morning. I would leave the approval of the executive committee meetings until the next meeting of the executive committee because it should be voted on by people who are in attendance.
Okay. While you're here, no, don't leave. Should we, as a matter of records, we should unapprove the minutes that we just approved here for items.
I think we should approve them with an amendment redacting the reference to the executive committee minutes.
Okay.
But it's perfectly fine to adopt a motion approving the Board of Trustees minutes.
Okay. So third time's the charm. We need a new motion approving item 1 and rescinding the approval of items 2 and 3, which will then be acted upon by the Executive Committee of the Board of Trustees at its next meeting. Do I hear such a motion?
I move.
Okay. Thank you. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Phew. Well, we made it in the third try. You can tell we're
Tom,
off to
can
a
I interrupt, please? I'm sorry. Because I'm so new and I'm learning everyone's voices, would you mind repeating who the motions are first and second
that was
from?
Member Fawn and Member Rawlings.
Thank you.
And it's also dawning on me that for boards of trustees, we actually need to do a roll call vote. Is that correct? Wow. So does that? All right, we're not doing so well so far. So does that mean that the voice votes were not not valid to begin with? All right. So now we'll take a roll call vote just on item 1, not on item 2 or 3, which we will put onto the next meeting of the Executive Committee. And I think the next meeting's minutes shall reflect that we just acted on item 1. So could you please call the roll for item 1, and you do not need to call the Chancellor, who is not a voting member.
Arnaldo Avalos? Jeffrey Baum?
Yes.
Connie Conway? Amy Costa? Tom Epstein?
Aye.
Jolena Grande?
Aye.
Mon Fan?
Aye.
Bill Rawlings?
Aye.
Valerie Shaw? Blas Villalobos?
Aye.
Alexander Walker Griffin?
That's it. Okay. Moving on to the next item 4. We have our Vice Chancellor here ready to present, I guess, with board policies, and Mark, you want to invite or want to identify?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. President and members of the board. I have here representatives from Fagan Freeman who are involved in drafting the policies. I'll have them introduce themselves. And on the human resources policies, Fagan Freeman also worked with Eugene Whitlock, who is behind me, and he will join us when we talk about the HR policies. Okay, Diane, want to take it away?
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. Our charge was to start the process of developing the board policies for the online community college. So with that, we worked with a number of individuals, including Mr. Whitlock on the HR policies, Mark Williams on the data privacy policies, and they are still in process of further development. Before you today, we have the policies that have been finalized, and the person who did the brunt of the work, the hard carrying, is Cynthia Smith, so she's going to take you through the policies.
And just so you know, we did, as we got started, we took a look at the resolutions and the board policies that had been adopted by the board in August of 2018. You may recall there were some simplified versions of policies adopted at that time, so we used that as a base. And then we started looking at other board policies from other community college districts, and then looked to start with those areas of policies that were most important to the college in getting started. So within the general framework of policies, there's 7 primary chapters, and we began with Chapter 1, the district, and Chapter 2, the Board of Trustees. Also, as a data-driven online entity, we thought it would be helpful to begin with some policies within Chapter 6, which is business and fiscal affairs related to data privacy and related issues. So, and then we also have a set of policies within Chapter 7, which is human resources. Those were the ones that we sought the assistance of Mr. Whitlock. So we reviewed the policies that we drafted, verified legal citations, and made revisions where appropriate given the unique nature of the online community college. The end result at this early stage is presenting to you Chapter 1, the district, Chapter 2, Board of Trustees,
a partial of Chapter 6, Business and Fiscal Affairs, and Chapter 7, Human Resources. Now, of those simplified versions that you approved in August of 2018, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 would be replaced by Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 that's being presented to you today. The remaining of what was adopted in August would carry on until we work through adopting additional chapters. And then we would be adding the partial Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. And I do want to note one change that I discovered last night as I was re-reviewing. Within Chapter 7, Policy 7370, Use of College Resources for Political Activity.
What page is that on?
I don't know because I don't know how your pages are numbered.
Page 80.
80 of 88.
Thank you. 80 of 88. There is a line within the first sentence. The first sentence reads, employees shall not use college funds, services, supplies, or equipment to urge the passage or defeat of any ballot measure or candidate. And there's a line that follows, including but not limited to any candidate for election to the Board of Trustees. That clause is not appropriate for this particular board. So the sentence will stop at or candidate period, and the rest of the sentence will be struck out. We are available to answer any questions you may have about the policies.
Member Costa.
Well, I have a number of questions about the policy, so I don't know how you want to kind of lead the discussion, if you want me to just launch into a list of them or by chapter.
I think probably make all, I suspect others will have comments, but as long as you have the floor, you might as well.
Perhaps by chapter it would be helpful so we could
Okay.
follow along.
Yeah, I can do it in chronological order, and then I'll do the page number of 88 so everyone can follow along. On page 7 of 88, which is the Board Policy 1200, which is our mission statement, it's really just a question for the remainder of the board, which is the last sentence references that it's consistent with guided pathways, which I know is our board policy, but I'm wondering if that's really evergreen enough for a mission statement. And if we want something that's a little higher level, just related to student success in general. Guided pathways is kind of our policy for now, but if we're successful, we should be constantly evolving our tool for student success. And so I would just submit that maybe we should have a broader kind of catch-all phrase there.
Pardon me? Anybody? So you're recommending that we delete the that is consistent with the guided pathways framework, or replace it with that is consistent with?
I would replace it with some phrase that basically says that, further student success or something along those lines. It's a little more generalized.
And you're okay with and leads to a pathway at a traditional community college, or would that be?
That's fine.
Do you want to suggest specific language?
If after I get through this and have 5 seconds to draft it, yes, I drafted it.
Yeah, it's hard to do that.
I agree. Sitting here to come up with the language to give to our council here would be a challenge. So I wonder, rather than adopting it today, that we, inspired by what you had brought up, and I'm sure you have other items. I must admit, Board Member Costa, that you read this more carefully than I do. Perhaps make your multiple points, and then after this meeting, that we go back and study a bit some more amongst board members, and then we'll come back with some recommendations. I think that probably may be the best, rather than spending time or sitting here coming up with language that is to be included in the board policy. So that's my suggestion.
I don't know what the timing is, and so I'd like to hear from staff on that. I don't want to hold it up if we need the policies in place because of some of the other things that are happening with the college, and I'm fine directing staff to come up with language just kind of based on the tone and tenor of our conversation if the timing necessitates that.
Please identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Sachita Menon, Senior Advisor to the Chancellor, also leading the advanced teamwork for the online college. I think we're happy to take some edits on it and then bring it back to your December Executive Committee meeting for feedback and approval, and then maybe after that it can move forward to the board in January.
And Tom, Mr. President, I presume that as this is only the first step of some board policies, we'll probably be adopting and reviewing and revising policies almost at every meeting until we have a full complement of policies to govern the college.
Right, so it's okay to make
It's a work
changes
in
now.
progress.
Yes.
My next comment is on page 10 of 88 regarding Board Policy 2200, Board Duties and Responsibilities. Number 1 should be student success. That is the North Star of everything that we should be doing as a board, and it should be our number 1 fulfillment of responsibilities. And so I'd like that to be A in that particular section, consistent with my last comments. Moving on to page 24 of 88, Board
Excuse me,
Policy.
Trustee Costa, may I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Is the request for us to develop language that aligns with what you're saying for the number, what would be A, included as student success? So to develop language in that regard.
That's correct. I have a question actually on page 24 of 88, and this is Board Policy 2345 regarding public participation in board meetings. We've talked a lot as a body about the use of teleconferencing and the ability to operate at multiple locations. And so I just seek to clarify on number 4 that public participation can also be accommodated electronically. We have a provision there, which is our normal course, asking for requests to speak be submitted in writing. But I want to make sure that, if we ever get to the part where people can kind of, through whatever platform, submit their comments electronically, that we can accommodate that.
So we are not at the point where we can do that yet. So I think the policies are drafted to address how we're currently operating. I think if we get to a point where we're able to do that, we would probably at that point want to come back and adjust the policies to whatever technology we're able to utilize.
Okay.
Okay.
On page 31 of 88, Board Policy 2430, this gets into the delegation of authority between the board and the chief executive officer, and I think that we should be very clear that any delegation of that requires a majority vote of the board. Through the course, we're certainly going to need to delegate some authority to the CEO to run the college, but I think whenever we do that, it should be transparent and that we as a board actually act upon it in a public setting. And so I don't know if there's language in other community college districts that is similar that we can utilize, but I would be open to that. And I just want to make sure that when we delegate authority, we do it as a body in a public setting.
We can work on proposed language on that part too.
Page 36 of 88, Board Policy 2710. We get into our conflict of interest policy, which is good. I don't see, and this is a question, it may be included in the contract for the CEO, an explicit conflict of interest policy for the CEO themselves.
It's in the HR policies.
I remember there being one in the employment section, but I'm not sure it specifically called out the CEO as well.
And the contract, okay.
Well, that's the filing of the statement of economic interest. The language of the conflict above that pretty much just refers to the board of trustees, but,
Mr. Whitlock also points out that that kind of language is typically found in the CEO's employment contract.
That's what I wondered. Okay.
So no change to the
No
policy.
change there. Next, on page 40 of 88, Board Policy 2715 regarding the Code of Ethics. I want to make sure that we have a section that highlights the board's fiduciary responsibility. I think it's important that as a board, we're good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and that we do have a fiduciary responsibility to the college and the state. Page 46 of 88, Board Policy 2735. This actually goes to some changes that we have as our standing BOG regarding reimbursement rates. And traditionally, we would tie ourselves to the Cal HR reimbursement rates. And so I want to make sure that the same is true here. They update those annually, and it helps create kind of more of an evergreen reimbursement rate.
It is, the Board of Governors would tie itself to the rates established by Cal HR. This is a district, and I think these numbers were taken from the original policy that we adopted at our first meeting. And we surveyed at the time what was typical of districts, and these were the kind of numbers that we came up with.
Mm-hmm.
Because the districts have a little more independence to set these kinds of policies than a state agency does.
I
It's
think
up
they
to the
should be
discretion of
tied
the
to the
board.
state agency. That's my 2 cents, which is that this is a weird hybrid, which is that is both a district, but it's a state entity as well.
What's the difference in the numbers between the state and?
It was
and these
a matter of
numbers?
a few dollars. It wasn't significant.
Higher or lower? I'm not even sure.
I believe a little bit higher.
The state's higher?
No, these are slightly higher than the
bit
state.
higher. I don't feel strongly about it. personally.
I don't, for me personally, it's not about the amount, it's what we're agreeing to. Are we fundamentally being, tying ourselves to a state agency or to a community college, right? So in principle, again, the amount doesn't matter, but what matters is, do we want to see ourselves as a college per se, or more like a state agency? And so that's my thought on that.
Anyone else have a thought on that? I tend to agree with Member Avalos here. I don't think we necessarily have to be bound by the state rules, given that, I guess the governance is a state-appointed body. Is that a permanent situation? Remind me about that.
Yes, it is currently. The legislature can do any number of
Legislature can
things in the
change it,
future,
yeah.
but at the moment, the statute has designates the board as a community college district. So it is functioning as a district.
Anyone else have any thoughts about this? All right,
I concur. If we want to view it has statewide implications or reach, but the district itself or the school, college itself is a district, and I think it must be viewed in that lens as a district.
I'm not sure this is the hill to die on that point.
I'm not dying on that. I'm fine. I just want to raise it because we just adopted another policy for the BOG, so I just wanted to make sure we had the discussion.
Without unanimity, I would recommend that we go with the recommendation, and then we can revisit it.
We go with the recommendation that's in here.
Right.
I do think that the larger point is important, and this is somewhat immaterial in the grand scheme of things. But if I don't know, are you comfortable with that, or would you prefer to?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
And then my last comment, and I will thank the president and the board for their indulgence of my many comments and questions, is, and I know that things are still working, but I want to make sure we have a sexual harassment policy for the online community college that's consistent with whatever other district policies are in that regard.
Is that something that should be in this section, or is there another section we haven't seen yet that would have a sexual harassment policy?
Yes, I believe it's in chapter 3, which
Okay.
would be next round probably.
Okay. Member Fawn.
Since Board Member Costa had her turn, and I, walking in here, I must say I wasn't inspired, but after hearing what you said, I'm now inspired. And since we're kind of talking on the tone and tenor, and I'd like to revisit the mission, page 7 again. And the last paragraph, the second paragraph of the mission to me is very important. Right now it says the college will offer unique content and will deliver it in a manner that is not duplicative of programs offered at other community colleges, and that will lead to a pathway at a traditional community college. And I think for the past year or so, when we've been discussing about this college, we've made it very clear that the college should not be duplicative or competitive in terms of programs and delivery with respect to the 114 colleges. So as you're kind of playing with words or revising the paragraph per the suggestion made earlier, I wonder if we can make it very clear that programs and delivery of the online college, 115 college, would not be remaining to the spirit and the intent as it was first founded, not be duplicative and competitive with the 114 colleges. So I guess we can sit here and finagle the wording, but I leave it up to the experts in this case. Thank you.
It does say explicitly not duplicative of already. Member Rawlings.
So I've got one correction and one amendment. The correction is on page 1. Under Chapter 2, you have BP 2200, Board Duties and Responsibilities, but then you have what should be BP 220, so 2220 for committees of the board.
Just so we could, Trustee Rollins, just to catch up with you 1 second. So
On
we're looking at board
Page
policy.
9 and 10
Page
of
9.
88. And 11.
So on the table of contents, there are
Also
two
look at
listings of Board Policy 2200.
Oh, thank you. We'll catch that.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the other change, the other amendment I would like to make is on page, I believe, 81. And that is 7380, retiree health benefit enrollment. And so down the, I guess, second to last line, enrollment pursuant to this policy shall be at the retiree or surviving spouse's own expense. I believe if through the collective bargaining process, the employees and the district opt to go with CalPERS Major Medical, I believe that CalPERS requires a portion to be paid by the district. And so what I would move to amend is to insert at the end, unless otherwise required by law.
Certainly.
Because the CalPERS regulations would cover that.
Thank you. May I ask one point of clarification, President Epstein? Trustee Acosta, could I take you back to 2430, please, just to make sure that I understand the request? Under Delegation of Authority, page 31 of 88, is the request that the language be amended such that it requires majority vote as a general policy or for each action? For example, the first sentence could be amended to say, in accordance with Education Code 75003, the board may delegate by majority vote. Is that the request there? Or
Yes, but I want to caveat it by saying I don't want it to become too cumbersome either. And so I, through the president, would request that staff look at what other community college districts do in this regard and try and mirror it. I just want to make sure, especially for, broader issues, that we're having a discussion here and that there's an associated vote. But for smaller ministerial items that are of low dollar value, I don't want every single thing to go through this board. So I'm assuming that there are other policies we can borrow from neighboring districts.
thank you for the clarification.
Yes. Member Grande.
Thank you very much. I have two questions, possibly. It depends on the answer to the first. I noticed that we received these promulgated board policies very late on Friday night, and I was wondering if there was a need for us to have a first read and a second read to give us adequate time to digest the volume of information that was presented so late. And if not, a first read and a second read, then I was wondering if we may be able to have the executive committee weigh in on these before final approval.
I think that's what we just agreed to do, since there are suggested changes, and I agree it would be nice to get these sooner, but I know the staff is working very hard to finish this stuff up on a short timeline, but there will be an opportunity as it goes to the executive committee, and then it'll actually come back to this full board as well. So I wouldn't advise having a formal, two approval process, but I think we will have an opportunity to massage these and adopt them in final form after we've all had a time to spend more intimately becoming familiar with them.
So in that case, does that mean that this then agenda item number 4 is not an action item, but rather an information item?
It was an action item, but we are going to not take action on it.
Very good. Thank you. Then I'll reserve the rest of my questions till the second time we see this.
Okay, but if you have suggestions now about things that you'd like the staff to work on between now and the executive committee meeting, now would be an appropriate time to raise them.
Okay, then just for clarification, on board policy 7120, this is page 54 of 88 in the suggested item for board policies. I notice in the third paragraph, under the board policy that is entitled Recruitment Full-Time Faculty Hiring, there is a mention of hiring classified employees, and I was wondering how appropriate it was under this particular title, Recruitment Full-Time Faculty Hiring, to have a section on classified employees.
Apparently, the part that says full-time faculty hiring should be removed. So you're speaking of the actual title? Okay. So this should be a recruitment policy for everybody.
Thank you.
Is that all? Okay. Member Baum?
I just had a question. We were talking about drawing on resources to compare and contrast with other districts. It's my understanding the Community College League has invested incredible efforts in developing model board policies. How much of the League's resources have been drawn on to develop these policies?
Well, we use the format that the League has put out there, but we didn't actually use the League's resources. We used community college districts that have used the League's format. There was a discussion about using the League's resources. That is a service that you need to sign up for, and there's a cost associated with that. So we were trying to take care of the issue without having to take that step.
Mm-hmm. I believe we have another staff comment here.
Sorry. We are actually, vis-a-vis the Foundation Administrative Services Agreement, finding a way to finance access to the League's documents, because that covers both the number of board policies. There's also a number of resources associated with that. So we are working towards getting access to League resources and participating more fully.
Thank you, because I would recommend we draw on those resources so that we know, instead of having to reinvent the wheel to go to one district or another district, there's a robust resource available for the development of board policies that govern colleges in the state.
Okay. Member Rawlings.
Thank you. So back to Board Policy 7120 on page 54. And thanks to Member Grande for calling out that section. I noticed regarding classified, it specifically calls out classified Senate, but the Education Code calls for the exclusive representative to be the representative in participatory governance, not the classified Senate.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Whitlock, who helped with the human resources policies.
Thank you. So for recruiting and these procedures, that doesn't involve the collective bargaining units in terms of how the procedures will be established. That's not part of participatory governance recruitment.
I would respectfully disagree on some of it, but I would leave it to you. You're an expert on this. My concern is that we have no classified senate established, and that would be an action by the classified employees after they're hired. And so I wouldn't want to presume that we are creating an entity that the employees themselves may not want. That's what I'm concerned about here.
So we can modify the language so that it says, if a classified senate exists, et cetera, this will take place. We were just anticipating that there might be one. If there isn't one, then that step would obviously not be followed in the process. We're trying to anticipate and guess a little bit so that we don't have to keep coming back to the board when everything changes. It's just to make the process a little smoother going forward.
Yeah. So if you could take a look at that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Mr. Walker Griffin.
Thank you, President Epstein. If we could turn to page 13 of 88 under committees of the board, and I have a quick question. I may have missed something, but just a little point of clarification. The ad hoc committees, are these comprised of members of the board or separate members of the public? And in addition to that, would it be possible to have a student on one of these committees, if possible, that directly affects the student? So say like something that has to do with classroom sizes, not necessarily something that has to do with like HR per se.
I think the intent is that you could have other members, or I'm sorry, other individuals participate on those ad hoc committees. The important part is to make sure that there's a less than a majority of the board members so that by Brown Act requirements, those can meet without having to comply with the Brown Act.
Thank you.
I have a question. The CEO, on this point, the CEO Recruitment Advisory Committee that is formed of people both inside and outside the board, would that fall under this committees of the board policy?
I believe the statute authorized the chancellor to come up with the approach to the hiring process for the CEO, so it's sort of a separate process.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Zaragoza.
So I just had a question on the mission, which is on page 7. At the very bottom, the very last sentence, it says that leads to a pathway at a traditional community college. I was just wondering if that is the only outcome we're looking for. I feel like there's a lot of students who won't necessarily lead them into a traditional community college. They're doing it for career purposes.
Trustee, do you have any thoughts or any recommended language, or feel free to forward that? We'd be happy to modify.
Okay, I just feel like maybe adding in something about, or furthering their career, or something along those lines, since some of our colleges or some of our students might go to a traditional community college afterwards, but a lot of them might be doing it for just furthering their career.
Good point.
Yeah, I for one think that's a very good point. that was sort of gnawing at me as well. So I'm not sure we need. You guys, you can propose a new language, and we'll look at that.
Thank you.
Next time. I think I saw another hand over here. Anybody else? I want to welcome Member Vice President Haynes and Member Anderson to the team here. You've missed a lot of exciting dialogue about board policies that I'm sure you'll enjoy reviewing later.
Mr. President, I wonder if, since we are kind of work in progress in this, and that after today's meeting, if there are additional thoughts that we as board members have with respect to the policy, is there like an email or if some place that we can actually convey additional thoughts?
I would suggest that you forward those to me, and I will provide them to Freeman.
That's best. I just want to make sure that there's a channel in which we can do that.
And just forward them to me. Don't copy anybody on it.
Surely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess this means I'm going to have to read the whole thing again. Any other comments on the board policies item 4? Okay, there is a public comment.
So John Stankus.
No, yeah, somebody will stand up for you. Mark, can you get, Mr. Stanskis needs a seat.
They're not listening.
You want me?
Look. Wait,
No.
Mark, we need
Hello?
a seat here.
Good morning. I'm John Stanskis with the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. I'm a little concerned to see this here today because we haven't seen it before. I really appreciate Board Member Baum's suggestion to look at the league's board policies, which are pretty standard throughout the state, because that will tell you where the Academic Senate should be in all of these. In terms of the ones that were presented to you today, Board Policy 1200, 2340, 2410, 7120, 7150, 7160, 7210, 7250, 7280, 7360, and 7400 are generally ones that go through a consultative process with faculty. At most, perhaps all, other districts in the state. Particularly, 2340 should reflect the right of the Academic Senate to consult with the board and provide its advice and judgment during deliberation. And 2410 should outline that there is some collegial process that occurs in the creation of board policies and administrative procedures. The CCLC documents will also tell you where CSEA and the student government should be involved in decision-making or recommending capacity to the Board of Trustees. What's on the table of contents on page 3 of 88 for next time, 2510, 3200, 3250, 3715, 3900, all of Chapter 4 and all of Chapter 5, and 6250 generally go through a consultative process. At your September meeting, I did recommend to you that the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges is available to work with this board to ensure the success of this endeavor that the state has determined we will proceed on. And I'd also like to say that, in general, the Academic Senate, at least in my experience with a Board of Trustees, does not have a 3-minute time frame. It is actually usually called upon whenever board policies and administrative procedures come forward to ask about the collegial process and engage with the Board of Trustees. So we are available. I have presented my contact information. We represent the 60,000 faculty in all academic and professional matters, and in the absence of any organization to represent the faculty voice currently, we are obligated to step into that role, and we are here.
Thank you.
Get up here, John. Can I speak? Okay, thank you. So, John, you named a number of the code sections that you are concerned about in terms of the consultative process. Would you, there might be others who were able to jot those down, but for the purposes of this board, would you please either note them so that we can make certain that we've captured them all?
Do you just want me to rip these pages out?
Well, not necessarily.
Oh, okay, I'll get them to you.
But I would like to know which ones they are, and for the purposes of some further discussion.
Yeah, I think you can submit that to our general counsel, and that way they'll be followed up on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to respond to one thing that John said too, and it's my experience that at a local college, the academic senate is given a time on the agenda as to report and engage as a regular practice, as opposed to speaking as a member of the public on specific items.
Thanks. Member Anderson? Thank you.
Can the staff address John's concerns about the collaboration and what the intent was? Was this a first draft? Was there a built-in process that you were going to go through with regard to collaboration with them?
I would just like to, perhaps I can level set a little bit. That might be helpful. We're currently in the process of forming the district from scratch, and I think we all need to take a step back and think about what that means and preserve the independence of the district, including the future faculty that will be permanently hired to have the right of self-determination and participation as the college's development progresses. So I think it's absolutely important that John points out and that we continue to stay astutely aware of the need to continue to engage faculty. I also would caution us against entering into a set of processes that are both counterintuitive and against the intent of the statute in terms of the statewide independence of the district. So I do think these things have to happen on balance. I do think they have to evolve over time. I think once we have a CEO in place beginning next year, once we start hiring permanent faculty, once we launch the early pathways, this will be a very different discussion, and the participants involved around the table will continue to change. And so, I think we're very excited about that development process. I think it's important that we're patient and that we don't rush things through that process.
Member Fong? Oh, you don't. Okay. We will not be taking action on this item. Anybody else? No. Nobody else has any other comments? Let's move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We are now up to item 5, the startup budget. Ms. Menon and Mr. Roberts.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes? Okay, there we go. My name is Julian Roberts. I am the CFO at the Foundation for California Community Colleges. I wanted to start with a brief personal note. I was a transfer student at Los Rios over 20 years ago, so I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak before this body today. So the purpose of my presentation is to describe at a high level the use of the first $10 million that have been released to the online college. But before I do that, I think it's helpful to describe the broader context of that $10 million. So on this slide, you'll see what we all know, that the state has provided $100 million in one-time funding and $20 million ongoing annual funding. So this first $10 million is less than 10% of what's available to us. So given that, internally, we've been discussing this $10 million as a micro budget or a startup budget. So we've intentionally kept it low, have held back, and are awaiting the CEO and CTO to provide a more fulsome budget proposal that will make use of more of the resources that are available to us. So that said, we have been striking a balance between developing the framework and developing the groundwork, and at the same time providing the necessary flexibility
and space for the CEO and the CTO to develop a broader and more detailed vision of how they can support the operations of the online college. So what that means specifically when it comes to the $10 million micro budget or startup budget is that there's some key pieces that are not included in that budget. So one would be a full organizational structure describing the key verticals within the organization as well as the hierarchies. And then the second piece is funding around the technology strategy that supports the online college. So this is a short presentation. We'll have one more slide. But this, we go one step deeper into the detail, but still looking at a high level for this first $10 million. So this table, it's a simple table. The column on the left is the functional area, so the category of activities that we are engaging in now and into the near term. The middle column has to do with the budget associated with each of those functional areas. And then the outcomes describes what we're seeking to do in each of those functional areas and provide some color and additional detail for those functional areas. So I'll just briefly go through each functional area, and then on the next slide we can see a breakout of how sort of one-time expenses versus ongoing expenses for each functional area. So with the first area, it's called student outreach, and essentially what we're doing is building awareness, doing outreach campaigns so that we have students enrolled in the online college by fall of 2019 and beyond. The second area is program design and development. So this is the educational content, the competency maps, the lesson plans associated that the students will take in as part of the online college. The third area is research and development. So part of the legislation includes a research and development function within the online college. And here, this is really like a lab or online learning or online education lab. And when this function becomes more mature, we anticipate that new products, new ideas, new innovations will be used for the betterment of the online college, but also diffused to the system. The fourth area is senior staff, and as I was discussing in the previous slide, the senior staff here, we have not built out the full organizational structure, and we're waiting on the CEO and the CTO to describe what that organizational structure looks like, what those verticals and hierarchies look like. And in the fifth area, this is infrastructure, it's finance, procurement, administrative policies. You've seen a lot of these contracts come before you. So with the law firm that we were just in conversation with, this is the area where we saw the foundation contract, I believe, at the last meeting, and several other contractors that are helping stand up and build the infrastructure for the online college. So here, did you have a comment? No. So in the next slide, again, these are the 5 functional areas I was just discussing in the previous slide. We're splitting it between one-time expenses and ongoing expenses. So one-time expenses would be items or activities that we would not see going in the out years of the online college, so it would just be a one-time stand-up. A lot of that is in the 4th column there under infrastructure, so a majority of those expenses are for stand-up one-time expenses. A good example of ongoing expenses would be the senior staff line, where a majority of those are salaries. So that was a lot in a little bit. I just wanted to see if you have any questions, comments, concerns.
Member Baum.
Just a quick question. If we adopt this, are you recommending an adoption of this budget framework?
Yes.
And then how will we be kept apprised as to the physical activity of the district?
So yeah, that's a good point. So the foundation has set up a finance and accounting system that we've just set up the chart of accounts. We have financial reporting, so we can report on all of these activities and items.
So we'll be able to assess, okay, student outreach, how was that $2.9 million allocated and what it was spent on. And
Yes.
then the board will be asked to approve certain expenditures as well, correct?
Yes, so this will all move in accordance with the pre-established policies that the board has. So the two of monetary significance are contracts above $100,000 and bidding for contracts above $50,000, with the exception of personnel services included.
Member Avalos.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So what happens to the other 90 million? So if it's one time, what happens to the other 90 million? Is it allocated for the year and then put into a fund, or does it need to be spent? Can you clarify a little more on the 90 million?
So the $100 million is available for a 7-year period, and I think it's wise to hold off a little bit on that question until the CEO and CTO arrive, because I think they'll have a more fulsome strategy when it comes to these very large acquisitions.
Yeah, my question was, was there was there a time horizon which we're unclear of? At least I was unclear of. There was a 7-year period. So thank you.
Yep.
Member Fawn.
I think that somewhat answers my question, but on item 5, the infrastructure, has the team given consideration in terms of the platform to use for the online college, and whether Canvas will be part of that or not, since the intent is to kind of segue these students into the traditional colleges, and my understanding is many, if not all of them, are operating Canvas.
Yes, there is a system-wide license for Canvas. We are going to hold off on the decision about the selection, both of the learning management platform, but also the other technologies surrounding the effective delivery, until we actually have a CTO in place. So right now we are exploring primarily through some of the leading providers that are using an array of these different learning management systems integrated with other systems platforms to provide better customer service, to track the official record, the information systems, as well as kind of the ERP as well. So we're kind of doing our homework on it, but it really will be the CTO that really needs to weigh in more heavily on the due diligence of the trade-offs associated with the selection of one set of systems and integrations.
Member Anderson.
A quick question. Due to the fact that we're in a transition between administrations, has there been discussions, Chancellor, with the incoming transition team about this particular issue?
I've had discussions with the governor-elect previous to him becoming the governor-elect, as well as his chief advisor during the campaign on higher education. So at least to this point, there's been no indication that the governor-elect has any intent to do anything other than what we're doing, and has been fully supportive to date.
My only concern is that, I'm supportive of where the 10 million is, but I think going forward, we just need to make sure where the new administration is and how they're going to go ahead and look at this from a policy standpoint.
And from a policy standpoint, I mean, statute has already created a new college. So really, unless the governor-elect plans to somehow take away the authority of the new Board of Trustees in statute, then I don't see that how the new administration would do that. But assuming that the new administration does, I have not received any indication that is the intent. As a matter of fact, the indications that I've received are that they're interested to see how this could be leveraged across the other systems.
Mr. Rawlings.
So a little bit of an operational question that might be better suited for the CEO, but taking a look at this budget, what caught my attention is it goes through December of 2019. Does this budget include the CalPERS, CalSTRS, payments, those kind of things? The reason I say that is I tend to be a little fiscally conservative when it comes to pre-funding those things, and I like to not end up starting off in debt.
Understood. So it does not include the costs of associated benefits. We're actually still in conversations as to getting a lot of that work set up. This is to indicate to you that this 10 million is allocated in a particular way as we start to understand better the cost structure of some of the other implications as we get further along in kind of testing the operational model and the business model behind it. We'll have a much better sense of how to build out a robust budget. So I consider this like a little micro budget that folds very neatly into a set of learnings that will be the ultimate kind of 2018, 2019 budget. And this has some of the more critical expenditures that aren't going to be necessary for us to be able to launch in 2019. Thanks.
Member Shaw.
Yes, I was just curious as to how many employees you intend to have for 1.2 million? How many bodies?
So right now, in that line, we have four employees.
So for 15 months, you're just gonna have 4 employees?
So this is pre sort of CEO and CTO budget. So once the CEO and CTO come on board, we anticipate that the staffing line will significantly increase. But we are, again, trying to strike that balance between laying the groundwork and the framework and also providing, again, sufficient space and flexibility for them to articulate and initiate their vision.
And I also just want to support the tenor of Board Members Anderson's comments. I think you said that at the last meeting, that he just really, I think he really just wants us to be proactive in terms of this effort, and then also all of our efforts with this new administration, because you really only have a window of probably 3 to 6 months to make your case. So do you think, does that sort of echo what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the governor-elect has been talking to the chancellor, and that's important, but again, with a downturn in the economy, anything can happen. There's experts here that understand, when you do go through a clawback, and my concern would be that, a year or 2 years into this, there is a correction in the economy, and then all of a sudden the monies that are there get clawed back. So, I want to make sure that we don't have obligations that we have to live up to, and there is a correction in the economy.
Member Costa.
On that note, these are Prop 98 dollars, so it's somewhat different in that they're ensconced within the minimum guarantee. I think if there were any change in course, it would be likely that it would come out with the governor's January budget, and I trust that our chancellor's having conversations leading up to that. To Board Member Baum's comment, though, I think it will be important going forward, as this is a new endeavor, that you're updating us on the spend amount. And so you've budgeted 10 million probably within the next 3 to 6 months. We're going to need to know what you've encumbered, what you've liquidated, to make sure that it's moving at a quick enough pace. And that's just because it's new. We have a system kind of as our normal board, but that's more mature. And so in the beginning, I think I would ask through the president that we get updates on kind of where we are against budget at whatever interval seems reasonable.
We're happy to accommodate that. And I think also there will be a considerable number of greater expenditures, especially out of the one-time funds coming, spring to summer. So we'll also try to stay ahead of that in terms of informing the board of those upcoming likely expenditures.
I understand we have an objective enrolling our first students in fall of 2019, correct?
It's technically December 31st, 2019, but yes.
Okay, because then I was wondering when we will start to see revenues from apportionment based on enrollments.
That's a good question. We haven't figured that out yet because we're thinking about the pilot cohorts as fairly small, and we want to de-risk that opportunity for the individual, so there's likely not a fee associated with it. We can take that one back and figure out exactly when apportionment is triggered.
Because we will get revenue from the state based on the units that we're delivering, correct? At some point?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, so there will be there's an ongoing revenue stream beyond the $100 million for the district.
Well, the revenue, the way it is broken up. It's $100 million is one time for startup costs. There is a $20 million annual allocation to the college, which is its base funding. And then beyond that, whatever FTES, whatever enrollment the college generates, the college will be paid for that enrollment. The challenge we have initially is we have not determined an enrollment model and a tuition model. That may not be settled until sometime in the new year. So it'll be difficult to determine how FTS would be paid until that's settled.
Any other comments on the board? Is there a public comment?
So, Linda Waugh, your item number is 4.1, but we're not quite sure. Oh, okay. All right, good. Thank you. So, John Stanskis.
I have to put this. Still good morning, Board of Trustees. I'm John Stanskis. I'm with the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. One of the things that I hope that you consider is when you are looking at the slide about the use of funds for the $10 million about student outreach and program design and development, research and development, senior staff and infrastructure. You ask where the collaboration is with the other entities that represent students and classified staff and faculty that can help with this endeavor. I am most concerned with program design and development because that is clearly something that faculty do. And when you talk about lesson plans and competency maps, that's a faculty job, and we are happy to help with that. But I would imagine that when you talk about leadership, organizational strategy, and operations, that classified staff and the Student Senate would have useful input for you as well about what makes sense for this endeavor into a statewide district. So I hope that you are thinking about that and asking questions about that as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move approval of the budget.
So we need a motion.
Second.
So we have Baum and Costa. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
No, roll call.
I'm sorry, that's right. I'll get it eventually.
Darius Anderson,
Yes.
Arnaldo Avalos,
Yes.
Jeffrey Baum,
Aye.
Connie Conway, Amy Costa,
Aye.
Tom Epstein,
Aye.
Jolena Grande,
Aye.
Pam Hayes,
Aye.
Mon Fan,
Aye.
Bill Rawlings,
Aye.
Valerie Shaw,
Yes.
Blas Villalobos,
Yes.
Alexander Walker Griffin.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Moving on to item 6.
We're moving through pretty quickly. I wanted to take this opportunity to actually introduce a key member of the advanced team, Lisa Baird. Lisa's been serving on the project as a consultant, leading some of the design management work between the two work streams around deeper user research associated with working learners, as well as work with helping the core team of folks that are developing our innovation management process as a precursor to setting up the research and development unit for the college. So I'll turn things over to her. Mainly, we wanted to provide you with a pretty exciting overview of kind of the comprehensive research and analysis that has emerged that is really going to shape ultimately both the design of the college and the design of the offerings and supports for the college. So I'll turn things over to Lisa.
Thank you, Ajita. And thank you, President Epstein and members of the board. I'm thrilled to introduce some of this research to you today. It's been a fascinating experience for all of us on the design team, and I can't wait to bring you along with this journey. So our research thus far with the working adult population, the learners that we're trying to serve, has been 13 in-home interviews across the state in the Bay, Sacramento, Fresno, and the LA area. We have conducted a quantitative survey that had 413 respondents that fit our profile. We've held 2 focus groups with working adults, one in Sacramento and one in LA. And we have had 7 community-led feedback sessions. And I want to take a moment to describe to you what a community feedback session is. In part in response to President Epstein's suggestion and others' suggestion at the kickoff meeting for this research work, we have endeavored to really expand the aperture of our view in this research and seek to put in front of our desired community those researchers that they would be most likely to respond authentically towards. And so what that means is through our in-home interviews, we've met several working adult learners who have then introduced us to some of their friends and family in their communities. And they have agreed to conduct some of these research interviews themselves. And we have equipped them and trained them with the necessary materials and tools to conduct those interviews without necessarily any of us from the design team present. And 7 of those sessions have been conducted, and we've been thrilled to gather this very authentic feedback to add to the rest of the feedback that we've gathered through other methods. I want to take you through some demographics of who we've been speaking to. So this is a true geographical array showing you exactly where all of our respondents have come from. This is a real map all across the state. It's been fascinating to hear the stories up, down, and sideways. These respondents really reflect the diversity of California. Over half of our respondents are Hispanic or Latino. A little more than a quarter have been white, and the remainder have been from almost 10% Black or African American and other ethnicities. Close to half of our respondents are working full-time or even more than full-time, and many of them are seeking more work than they actually have. Their family situations vary. This was an interesting question when we were designing the question itself and really trying to think hard about what the responses might be. You can see those listed across the bottom horizontal axis. But the bottom line here is that half of our respondents do have children and need to fit their educational experience around that family obligation. This is probably not shocking to anyone, but it still bears a moment of really noting. 84% of these respondents are making less than $50,000 a year, and a full third are making less than $10,000. This is a reality that folks are really dealing with, and this is the reality that the design of this enterprise also has to acknowledge. These are some of the folks we've met. It's been so fascinating, really, and enjoyable to get to know these people as individuals. Besides our quantitative survey, these are some of the people we've actually gotten to know as people, and they've invited us inside their home and introduced us to people they care about and really welcomed us and shared their stories. So let's jump into some of them. This is Golden. He's from around here. I actually was at this interview, and he really gave us an insight about the demands of working while undertaking an education. The realities of low-wage work often are just incompatible with school schedules. So Golden says, I was working at a vegetable fruit warehouse, and I was working there from like 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon until 3 or 5 in the morning, and I had such long hours. It was part-time at first, and then I was doing my studies, but I'd have to hop on the live reel, which was a quiz type of thing for the institution he was at the time. I'd have to do my live reel. I barely got any sleep. And then I'd have to be back at work by 2 p.m. the next day. So it just started really getting rough. So Golden was undertaking a bachelor's at Full Sail University. And he had been on unemployment for some months. And because he had unemployment income, he was able to go to school at Full Sail all online and not worry too much about making rent. And as soon as that unemployment ended, he suddenly realized that he had to make rent and he had no way to do it, and he hadn't planned for that moment. And so he took 2 shifts, almost 16 hours, a double shift at this warehouse, and you can imagine he very quickly ran out of time for school. So I think this story was powerful for us in terms of understanding the way individuals plan, and that their stability around life, not just education, but around life, is constantly shifting. It's like shifting sands. I want to introduce you to Andrew. Andrew's from the LA area. He really drove home the point that education for him and for many of these working adult learners, it really must be workforce relevant. That's just non-negotiable. Everything else is really regarded as not just fluff. Fluff would almost be benign and neutral, but for these individuals, it's time lost and it's an opportunity cost. So time devoted to education must be practical and relevant to a future job. Andrew says, I'm not taking any classes that aren't relevant to what I'm looking at doing with the rest of my life. So anything that I miss in class is going to weaken me at problem solving in the future. Whereas having to take classes on 17th century French poetry to get a liberal arts degree that I'm never going to use, so why does it matter? He must have taken a course like that because he mentioned that particular subject matter many times. This is Veronica, a really interesting young woman. She spoke about feeling as though she was expiring in some kind of way. It was very touching and at the same time saddening to hear her talk about this, but she just spoke about it as if it was the most natural thing in the world. She says, employers, I think that they do start to discriminate when you get a little bit older. I know they're not supposed to, and they're supposed to look at everybody equally, but they think about it for insuring the person in life insurance and like liability. If I get older, I might fall or some silly things like that. And what she was speaking to is this concern that as she got older, she was less and less attractive as a potential employee. And she felt as though with every passing day, she was simply getting less valuable for the workforce. So with those stories in mind, I just want to jump into some of the quantitative data. The overall theme here of the 3 chunks of quantitative data I'm about to show you point to this notion on the screen: working adults see education as a path to a stable job with growth opportunities. And so I want to show you 3 pieces of our survey that support this. The first is that these working adult learners recognize that their current job is temporary and unstable. It's the shifting sands I mentioned. It doesn't feel solid, and it isn't solid. And they are craving some kind of longer-term stability. So the survey showed us that a full 59% of these working adult respondents recognize that they don't have long-term job security, and they are looking for ways to fix this. So the red is, I need to find a job. The medium red is, I'm constantly worried that I might lose my job. And then the pink is, I'm okay for now, but my job won't support me or my family in the long run. So all of those point to this feeling of instability, and they are seeking that stability potentially through an education. Here's a story to support this data point. This is Rhoda. She's in LA. She said, being a nurse, it's a career. Being a facility manager, which is her current job, being a facility manager is not a career, it's just a job. No one can take away me being a nurse. A career is something like education. No one can take that away from me. So she's, again, looking for that bedrock, and she thinks it may be waiting for her in education. Okay, moving on to the second data point. These working adult learners, they see value in an education, and they see that that could be a path for helping them get a stable job, which in some ways is surprising considering the relative lack of success many of these respondents have seen in post-secondary. So despite not completing post-secondary education, 85% of respondents do see it as having some kind of value, whether they said it was extremely helpful Over 20% of people said that, or that is at least necessary in their life. And then interestingly, almost 40% of folks said that it is somewhat helpful, even if they hadn't completed. So that shows promise for us and validation in our endeavor towards this enterprise. So here's a story supporting this data point from Danielle. She's also in the LA area. Actually, no, she's in Fresno. Danielle said, when she was reflecting on her college experience where she did not complete, she said, even to this day, it's like, darn, college did matter. God, what would have happened if I actually went through with what I wanted to do? I would have changed the world. I would have done great things, but it just never happened. So she still has a bit of hope. Finally, this data point here is, again, despite knowing how useful college can be, it can be hard to succeed because we've all heard this before, life gets in the way. And I think it's important to stress how different the lives are of these working adult learners that we've been speaking to, and how the notion of life getting in the way is truly different for this person than it may be for you or me or others that we know. Here's the data. Reasons for dropping out. Jobs and family really dictate the learner's schedules. And when you don't own your own calendar from hour to hour, it's really tough to own your own educational experience. Traditional higher ed does not fit within those constraints. It simply cannot flex. It's too calcified, and they have other items on their day-to-day, hour-to-hour calendar that are non-negotiable. And I look at this data in this chart in particular, and I think back to Golden from here in the Sacramento area when he had to take the double shift at the warehouse. What would Golden have said if he received this survey question? He probably would have cited financial, but what's buried in that response, in that survey response, is the story about getting off of unemployment, needing a double shift in order to make rent. And so you have to look at these statistics and really understand the stories that they're generated from, right? And that financial can mean so much more. It isn't simply that the tuition was unaffordable. In many cases, the tuition was already effectively free for people who still cite financial as the reason for leaving. Here's a story that backs up this data point from Brianna. Brianna is actually a friend of Rhoda, so this is some research that we got through the community-led interviews. Work got so hard, and changing jobs, and my son getting older, and it just got really harder and harder and harder, and I just had less and less time because he was doing activities, and he got older, and he wanted to do this, and I was just like, what do you do, you know? Where do you find the time, you know? Okay. Now I want to shift gears from those three data points and take you to our last big chunk of the quantitative survey that we administered, and this was around value proposition. So having learned all this from the in-home interviews and having learned all this from the survey, we wanted to test several value propositions to find out what might actually speak to the working adult learner and bring them into this new California Online Community College enterprise. I'm going to show you 10 different value propositions that we tested, and then show you the results of a MaxDiff statistical survey question to show you what they ranked highest. So, in no particular order, we thought maybe one value proposition for these learners might be around getting in-demand skills. So, the survey question read, get the skills employers are hiring for in today's market, today's job market. What if it's around skills for a stable career? Learn the skills you need to start a stable career. Maybe it's around alternative pathways. Get a credential that counts. 4 years of college isn't the only way to a well-paying job. Perhaps it's around deferred tuition or something around affordability. Only pay for your education when you land a higher paying job. A value proposition around earning more money. Get the credentials you need to earn more money. Pretty straightforward. Discovering new paths. A career that suits you might be something you've never heard of. Learn your options and start gaining the skills you need. Perhaps it was something around upskilling. Upgrade your skills and increase your earning potential in a matter of weeks. Trying to reach our working adult slightly higher age skew, so maybe something around older learners. Courses designed for people with more life experience than the average college student. Maybe it's something around job placement. Our program doesn't stop at the credential. You'll get support until you land a higher paying job. And maybe it's around something with access to employers and gaining work experience. Join a program that puts you in front of potential employers and gives you real work experience. So this is the MaxStiff survey output. So this just simply shows integrated and combined ranking, where the highest ranked value proposition was actually the last one I showed you, so I'm going to go back to it really quick. This, by a long shot, and the three behind it, all had to do with employment outcomes. It had to do with getting in front of employers and gaining work experience. This reminds me a lot of Rhoda's comment about becoming a nurse and having that experience and career be something that can't be taken away from her. And this value prop really speaks to that story, and it really points to the workforce relevant aspect of this enterprise that is so crucial to the people that we are trying to serve. So what we realized in this moment when the survey results came back, that the top four here all have something directly to do with employment, employers, making more money with newfound skills, or job placement. That made us realize that in order to serve our working adult learner, we really need to understand the needs of the hiring manager. Because the hiring manager is the one person that stands between this working adult learner and the goals that they so very badly want to achieve. And so in a twist of research events, we realized that in order to really serve our working adult learner, we have to learn how to serve the hiring manager, which is an interesting outcome of an initial round of research. But it is that value proposition that they value the most. So right now, we have a working hypothesis that is pointing us as researchers towards understanding the needs of a hiring manager, a rank and file hiring manager. So we're currently undertaking another round of research to really dive into this notion that in order to be radically student-centered, we need to be radically hiring manager-centered. And so what that means is we're conducting the exact same type of research methodology with another group of people. This time it's your average manager, your average hiring manager at a company, small, medium, large, somewhere in between. Find out what it is that is keeping them from giving the opportunities that we would like to see offered to these working adult learners. It's going to be more in-home and on-site interviews. It's going to be a quantitative survey, and we've actually already put out the survey and gotten an initial round of responses back. And we're looking forward to kind of collating that in a similar fashion as today's presentation and bringing that round of research to you next time. So with that, I will pause and
I will just add one thing, just to bright line the relationship between this body of research, the research around hiring managers, and how that actually feeds into design. So what has started to emerge from this in terms of the key value propositions and the priorities that adult learners have identified to us they need this college to do for them, that's upon which how the student experience, that kind of prototypical student journey, can be designed. And that's when we can think about what are the right technologies to source to deliver that experience. And I mention that because having been around these issues for some time now, not just in the online context, but just sort of higher education workforce issues generally, we used to have a theory that if we created the content and the content was aligned with what one subsection of employers said was right, that was sufficient. And what we're learning is that there is an insufficiency for serving this population that we talked about. So when we think about or talk about traditional student supports, we have to be thinking more expansively about how to facilitate the goal that the adult learner has identified for themselves and has clustered around, and what supports are necessary to deliver that. So I think it's actually a great build on a lot of the great reform work that's already happened in the system around advancing work-based learning, around thinking about both curricular design that's co-designed with industry, but in order to be ahead of what's about to happen in the labor market and to build a college that can be more rapidly responsive to it, we have to be designing with an understanding of where all the pain points are for the folks kind of in that marketplace, that adult learner seeking that career advancement opportunity, and the individual who may not have the right assessment of our graduates in terms of actually securing the labor market opportunity. So the hypothesis is really necessitated out of the early research, and so I just wanted to sort of illustrate how we'll eventually utilize it in the college's design. Do folks have any questions?
Member Shaw, or unless.
I think that's interesting. Your last thing about how, trying to change the minds or the outlook of the hiring managers. Probably, I guess, maybe about a year or two ago, we all had a training session on unconscious bias. And I think that's probably, you can do your survey, but I think that's
Right. Go ahead.
that's sort of the bottom line, because the people who do the hiring don't feel a real connection with the people who are potential employees, and I think that's a problem. So I'm really curious as to see what you get with that study. But this is just a sort of an issue with me. Going back to the beginning in terms of the people that you interviewed, and you talk about I want to know who the multi-ethnic people are, because in the African American community, you will not find somebody who's been here for centuries 100% African American. In the Latino community, Latinos are mixed with European and African. So who are these multi-ethnic people?
It was a survey response that was available to the respondents, so they self-selected that option. We do not have the ability to go back to the survey respondents and ask them exactly why they selected that option.
Okay. Because most people of color are multi-ethnic. All right.
Understood.
Thank you.
Member Fawn.
I think your presentation has just awakened my mind further, particularly on your very last point about being hiring manager centered. And so I do applaud your team for taking on this initiative. And as you pointed out, the move toward, the work that you're embarking on will move us toward the point in which I made reference to earlier, is that how would this college be different? How we are serving a different population. So if we can actually focus on that and translate the data that you've gathered through your research into implementation for the student population that we're targeting, for the college that we're trying to design, which would be different than the other colleges, I think that's a win-win. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Member Anderson.
Okay, quick at the key point that you mentioned. I found the information very enlightening. The exchange between the student and employers. With regard to the online component, I know it's early and we're still, coming up with different theories on it. What is your idea on how we actually do that? When you're on a campus, it's a whole different experience. But if you're online learning, how are you guys proposing that we go ahead and get those students in front of potential employers in their community?
There's many whiteboard sessions that we've had actually thinking through some of these questions. So I'll do one for illustration, not because we're executing on it, but just one of the ideas that's out there is we were having a conversation with a large technology provider who actually has a firm base that can, in the IT space, allow for remote work-based learning opportunities. So we could integrate a component of that essentially unlocks for that individual student an ability for them to demonstrate the skills that they've learned through the skills acquisition process and the competency-based process to a potential employer. And so that's a illustration of a remote example. There's also a ton of physical place-based examples if we can do the more comprehensive deeper dive with where hiring managers are located. So in the short run, it's easy for us to identify large companies or these kind of hub entities that serve a whole market that we can connect to more directly. And that gets us to some of the larger firms that need to, that we want our graduates to be hired by. But when you get into sort of the Lisa talked about this a little better, but the small and medium-sized organization and companies, that's actually the solution that we're trying to figure out how to design for. And if that could be a place-based internship opportunity, it could be similarly a modularly designed work-based learning experience, but that information flow goes to the prospective employer, again, so that an individual can demonstrate what they know and what they can do.
Member Avalos.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I really like the photos of the people and the stories, so that was great. You know, when I go through your proposition, let me see here, your value proposition that you're creating 1 through 10, probably 9 out of the 10 deal with employers and jobs and new jobs. And so I worry about us leading with that too much, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, what's really important based on the value proposition is that we are creating an opportunity for these folks to get new jobs, new opportunities, new employment, higher pay. At the same time, we want to make sure that we can deliver on that, right? So to me, if we're really leading in that direction and that's our, you know, value proposition, then we have to think about career development. We got to think about resume, and we got to think about interviewing, and where are those employers, right? Because, you know, in a sense, we have to really think about a career office or something that's associated with that, right? The other thing is when I look at your site map of the interviews that took place, you have a sprinkling of folks outside, you know, the general area, so they're very rural communities all the way up to the Oregon border, all the way south to the Mexican border, and you have these little dots in between. You know, that's why I wonder about what is the job opportunities for them, and if we are leading with 9 out of 10 value propositions, it's going to be better pay, better jobs. What's in it for those rural? How can we get those opportunities for the rural folks that are in the sprinkling of this site map?
Again, a whiteboard hypothesis on this is part of what we need to be able to do most effectively, and this is where a bulk of the work around the innovation management and process design is for the R&D unit, are what are the sort of data feeds that give us an acute understanding of where openings and opportunities are, and then how do we map upskilling credential pathways in the context of both geographic opportunity, but also not confined by geographic opportunity. So those opportunities that can be non-place-based, but offer better wages and better opportunities for continued upskilling.
So to me, the uniqueness about this opportunity, you know, is that career piece, right? Because everything through the value proposition 1 through 9 of the 10, again, has to do with getting a job after going through this process.
That's right.
And so we have to be able to help facilitate that some way or another. So let's not lose sight of that. We just, you know, take this credential, take these class, you know, upgrades, and at the end of the day, you're gonna, you know, we magically appear with a job, or it magically appears. We have to make sure we facilitate that some way somehow as well. So don't lose sight of that.
Thank you. That's a great comment, and absolutely thinking about that.
President.
So thank you for this presentation. And you really did point to an area that's of real importance, and that is, and especially in the rural areas, and that is that small and mid-level employer. We were up in Reading and looked at a career education program, and its success is solely the result of the relationships between the college and those mid-level employers that are there, and making certain that so there's this symbiotic relationship, and that is that those employers are not only getting well-trained employees, but they're also getting the state-of-the-art equipment that they are being trained on. So that's really critical. The other thing I just would like to note is this is a really, we are moving in a very interesting relationship, and that is the relationship of, how do I put it? We are not just going to educate you and train you. We are going to be partners with you all the way through this cycle, and and this is a very big order, until you get that job. So, and we've not done that work before, to be really honest, in a traditional way. And the private for-profits have said it, but haven't done it either. And so I suspect that that's the piece that we're going to have to work on the most, because the folks that you interviewed were very, very clear about, one, getting the relevant training in the relevant fields with no fussy stuff. Because at the end of the day, they not only want a job, they need a job that has some longevity to it. And so I would be interested, as you move forward, this hiring manager piece, there is indeed, I would agree with Member Shaw on this implicit bias, that folks just don't recognize that they have it. So I would be very interested in your exploration of what other elements, and then how do you envision working with that group of folks? I'm enthralled with that.
Yes, Member Villalobos.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm not at all surprised that the top 4 have something to do with employers or hiring managers, and I'm really happy that you actually mentioned hiring managers. I worked very closely with several nonprofits in the veteran employment field, and I can tell you that our greatest success, and by that I mean getting thousands of veterans placed with average salaries of over $55,000 a year, came when we actually interacted with the hiring managers. One thing that I would love to learn more about is your plan on maybe identifying, or not identifying, I'm sorry, but taking advantage of the WOTC program, so the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, which is a program, federal program, that will allow small to mid-sized companies to actually claim tax incentives for hiring individuals from this very, diverse ethnic backgrounds. In our case, that was something that allowed us to take advantage of or leverage the resources that we had in the community. And just in LA County alone, I mean, it brought in millions of dollars worth of tax incentives for the small companies that were hiring our veterans. And these were careers, but it really did help not just get the word out, but also educate the employers on the advantage and also the quality of jobs and the quality of employees that we're getting.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned the WOTC program, because it is something that has come up in initial research around the hiring manager. And this is a great example to illustrate the exact necessity of the hiring manager research. So for instance, going to small and medium-sized businesses and asking why they are not taking advantage of the WOTC program, finding out what those points of friction are, and in what way can the college bake into its overall enterprise offering to help ease some of those points of friction, right? So we're coming at this from a very balanced labor market point of view. And as with any market, the labor market has both a supply side and a demand side. And so we need to understand what those points of friction are on the side of the hiring manager, so that these two sides of this market can start doing business with one another. Folks can get jobs, and hiring managers can get employees. So the WOTC program is an excellent place to start.
Okay, Chancellor.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Ajita and Lisa. I just want to take an opportunity with this presentation to really take a step back. We've had a few board meetings, and there's been a lot of different discussions about what we're doing, why we're doing it, a lot of things that we bring to the table from our own experience. And we like to see things that we've seen before. We like to see it in ways that we've seen it before, because we all come with experience. But the very brief discussion you just heard, and it's very brief because you could literally spend the whole day hearing about the different discussions that have been had thus far in the meetings and the sessions that we're trying to allow to flourish. Because what we're trying to do is to create something unique, completely unique. If we can't do that, then there is no point for us doing anything, okay? If we can't create something unique, then one of the other 114 colleges has or will create it on their own, through their own processes. The leverage that we have is that unlike the 114 colleges, this new enterprise only has one core competency that we're trying to develop: allowing individuals to gain skills and then linking them to jobs. 114 colleges have the job of generating credentials, generating transfer opportunities. This new college's job is to create economic value for the participants. Plain and simple. Economic value. So I would encourage us, as we build this, and it will be bumpy at times because there are certain structures that we have to build around. But the faculty of this college, the president of this college, the administration, the classified staff of this college will have the opportunity to build it themselves. And as a board of trustees, you have one constituent and one constituent only: the hardworking people of the state of California who need us to step in and help them get a job. Not help them graduate and transfer, not help them gain an associate's degree, help them get or keep a job. So those are the conversations that we need to be focused on, and that's the questions that many of you have asked to challenge what we're doing, what we're thinking around this question is the critical issue. And then as well as this whole notion of putting the hiring manager at the center of a conversation. That is something that does not happen in the other 114 colleges for many reasons. Primarily because of the way we're organized, our philosophy. We have a chance to put that at the center. And to Trustee Avalo's point, to really commit to this value proposition. If we say the value proposition of the online college is the actual act of employment, that is a far different value proposition than we create at the 114 colleges. We essentially prepare students and then allow them to go on their journey. This will be very different, and we have to suspend our own biases, our own thoughts, our own belief as to how this should look, and allow as much room for the creativity that will come up with some of these ideas, because it's our only chance for that kind of creativity. Once we set things in motions, once we set curriculum in place, once we decide on an LMS, once we decide on a way of delivering it, we begin to constrain and constrain and constrain. So I really appreciate the thoughts that you all had on this particular topic, because this is the core of the issue. All the rest of the stuff will fall into place. Board policies will fall into place, and if we don't get them right the first time, we'll get them right the second or the third time or the fourth time, as many of our colleges do day in and day out. The relationships we're going to build for our faculty, for our staff, those are the things that we can begin to work on now by building this culture of the kind of issues that we're going to be dealing with. We are already attracting faculty. We are already attracting individuals who want to come work for this institution. That will continue to grow. But this issue of what we are going to be for the people of California. That is something that begins here, begins in these meetings, and then will inform how we hire, how we staff, how we procure. What is the purpose of the Board of Trustees? What should be the primary purpose of your business? Those are the issues that will begin to take shape. I apologize for being late. I would have said much the same when I first got here, but this is what I'm glad excites the board, because this is what excites me. And I come to this suspending my own belief on how this should look. I have an idea based on what I've seen elsewhere, but this will become what it becomes, not what we think it should become.
Member Costa?
Just bringing this back to our board policy and the mission statement, that is what our mission statement should embody. And so I'm looking at our general counsel. I think instead our mission statement is very risk adverse. We don't want to duplicate. If the online college is doing what we envision it, there is no chance of duplication of what's happening at the other colleges. So I would just ask through the president that some of what the chancellor has just enumerated in a much more eloquent way than I was able to earlier today is incorporated in the mission statement as part of the board policy.
Any other board comment? Are there any public comments on this item?
Yes, John Stanskus? No.
No?
Oh, at the, oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to particularly thank you for creating those community-led sessions. I think that's important, a good way to have broadened the number of people we're talking to, and excellent presentation. Look forward to seeing your continuing work. And now, it's time for a break. Let's try and come back at 11:05.